The Cravathi Empire was vast, a collection of powerful planets ruled by warriors known for their strength and pride. Their empire stretched across the stars, feared and respected by all who encountered them. But within the Cravathi royal family, there was one that did not meet the expectations of greatness: Princess Cyleria. Cyleria, the only child of King Tharvok, had been born different from the other Cravathi. While her people were known for their immense physical strength and towering stature, Cyleria had always been small, frail, and sickly. Her skin, usually a deep green among the Cravathi, had a paler hue that stood out like a sore thumb. The other children in the royal court mocked her for her weakness, and even her father, the mighty King Tharvok, struggled to hide his disappointment. King Tharvok had built an empire through battles and conquests. He was a leader who believed in strength above all: physical, mental, and emotional. His people respected him because he was a great warrior, a king who led from the front and showed no signs of weakness. But his daughter, Cyleria, was far from his image of what a future ruler should be. She lacked the strength to even hold a sword properly, and her health seemed to fail her at every turn. To many, Cyleria was a reminder of something the empire could not afford: weakness. Her frailty was a stain on the royal family's reputation, and it seemed like no matter what was done, she would never be the warrior her father dreamed of. It was during one of the Cravathi Empire's most difficult times, when their war with the humans had reached a delicate point, that King Tharvok decided it was time to make a decision. There was an ancient treaty between the Cravathi and humans, a fragile agreement that kept the peace between the two species. But as the tensions grew, King Tharvok realized that he could no longer afford to maintain this treaty in the usual way. In a private meeting with his most trusted advisors, King Tharvok made an unusual choice. Instead of sending a mighty general or a seasoned warrior, he decided to send his daughter, Princess Cyleria, to the human ambassador. The treaty demanded that a royal Cravathi be given as a symbol of peace, and Cyleria would be the one to fulfill it. "Send her to them," Tharvok said to his advisors, his voice stern and unwavering. "Let the humans see her as a sign of our goodwill." The advisors were shocked, unable to hide their confusion. "But, Your Majesty," one of them stammered, "Princess Cyleria, she is not a warrior. She is not fit to represent the strength of the Cravathi." King Tharvok's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "It is not strength they seek. It is a gesture of peace. She will be a symbol, nothing more. The humans will not question her weakness. They will see what they want to see." And so, Princess Cyleria was given a ship, a small crew, and a mission. She was to travel to the human colonies, where Captain Ethan Vance, the human ambassador, would meet her. King Tharvok made it clear the princess was a gift, nothing more, and she would return when the peace agreement had been solidified. Cyleria stood at the edge of the royal platform, staring at the ship that would carry her away from everything she had ever known. Her heart was heavy, not because of the journey ahead, but because of what it meant for her. She had spent her entire life hiding in the shadows of her father's expectations, trying to become something she could never be. "Father," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, "I will do as you ask." Tharvok nodded once, his gaze distant. He said nothing more, as though the decision had already been made long before it reached her ears. As Cyleria boarded the ship, she felt both relief and fear. She was leaving behind the palace where she had always felt like an outsider. Yet she could not escape the feeling that her mission was more than just a formality. Perhaps, deep down, she hoped that this journey would prove something to her, maybe even to her father, that she was not as weak as they all believed. The ship lifted off into the stars, carrying Cyleria far from the Cravathi Empire, toward the unknown world of humans. She didn't know what awaited her there. But one thing was certain: this was a journey that would change her life forever. As the ship glided through the stars, Princess Cyleria gazed out of the window, watching the vastness of space stretch out before her. The journey to Earth was long, and she found herself lost in her thoughts, She had spent her entire life in the shadow of her father's expectations, and now, as she traveled toward an unknown planet, she couldn't help but wonder what her future held. The humans were a strange and foreign species to Xyleria. The Cravathi had always viewed them as weak, primitive, and beneath their superior strength. But there was something intriguing about them. The humans, though small in comparison to the mighty Cravathi, had managed to survive and thrive in ways the Cravathi couldn't fully understand. They had built cities on a single planet, formed vast networks of communication, and even explored space in their own way. In some ways, they had proven their own kind of strength. Xyleria's ship finally touched down on Earth, the surface of the planet vast and green. The air, thick with oxygen, made her feel even more out of place. She had grown used to the thin, almost sterile atmosphere of Cravath, and now she felt like she was breathing for the first time. The crew that accompanied her was composed of human soldiers, their faces friendly but guarded. They were curious, but also unsure of what to make of her. She was escorted through the bustling human base, and every step she took made her feel even smaller. There were humans everywhere, working, talking, laughing. To Xyleria, they seemed so simple, so unburdened by the expectations that had always weighed heavily on her. She couldn't help but feel like an outsider. Soon, she was introduced to Captain Ethan Vance, the human ambassador who had been assigned to guide her through her stay on Earth. Ethan was tall, with dark brown hair and a warm smile that made her feel at ease, even though she didn't know why. He was different from the Cravathi, who always seemed to hide their true feelings behind a wall of strength and pride. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed open, honest, and kind. "Princess Xyleria," Ethan said, bowing slightly as he greeted her. "It is an honor to meet you. I hope your journey was comfortable." Xyleria nodded, her voice soft as she replied. "The journey was long, but I have made it safely, Captain Vance. I trust I will be well received here." Ethan smiled warmly. "You are our guest, Princess. We will do everything in our power to ensure you feel welcome." Xyleria wasn't sure what she expected, but the human base was unlike anything she had ever seen. The technology was advanced, yet there was a certain simplicity to it. The humans had managed to create machines that allowed them to travel through space, but they still held on to things like personal connections, laughter, and friendship. It was strange to her, yet comforting. For the first few days, Xyleria stayed in a private quarters, given time to rest and adjust to the new surroundings. The humans treated her with respect, but Xyleria couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, studied almost. She knew she was an unusual sight, an alien princess, small and fragile compared to the humans. She could feel their eyes on her when she walked through the halls, their curiosity evident. But it wasn't just the humans who intrigued her. As the days passed, Xyleria began to notice something else about herself. The weight of the human world seemed lighter, freer than the rigid control she had known on Cravath. Here, she was not expected to be a warrior, to fight and conquer. Instead, she could simply exist, and for the first time in her life, Xyleria found herself wondering what she could do with this freedom. She spent time learning about the human way of life, watching their practices and routines. They had something the Cravathi didn't, a deep bond with one another, a sense of shared purpose. She saw it in the way they worked together, how they supported each other during difficult tasks. It was different from the Cravathi, where strength was the ultimate measure of worth. Humans valued different things: creativity, teamwork, and the ability to adapt. As the days passed, Xyleria felt a spark growing within her. She began to train with the human soldiers, learning how to use their technology. It wasn't easy. She was not strong like the Cravathi, nor was she accustomed to their way of thinking. But Xyleria was determined to prove that she was more than what her father had believed her to be. One day, Captain Vance approached her with a suggestion. "Princess, I know you've been training, but I think it might be helpful to work with the team. We could teach you how to use some of our advanced equipment. It might help you gain confidence." Xyleria looked at him, hesitant but curious. You think I am capable? Ethan nodded. I think you have potential, Princess. You've already shown more determination than most people would in your position. Something inside Sileria shifted. She had never been given a chance to prove herself before. In her father's eyes, she had always been a disappointment, someone who could never live up to the Cravathi ideal. But here, among these humans, she had the chance to be more than just a symbol. She could be herself, and that realization lit a fire within her heart. Sileria spent her days on Earth with a growing sense of purpose. Every day, she pushed herself harder, learning something new, adapting to her surroundings. The humans had welcomed her into their world, but it wasn't just kindness she saw in their eyes. It was respect. They didn't see her as the fragile princess of Cravath, the one who could never hold a sword. Instead, they saw potential, and that alone sparked something within her. The training was difficult at first. She was not used to Earth's gravity, nor the way human technology worked. The exosuits, which were designed to enhance human strength, felt strange on her body. The first time she tried one on, she stumbled and nearly fell. But the humans didn't laugh or mock her. Instead, they helped her up, adjusted the suit, and guided her step by step. They were patient with her, never rushing, always encouraging. Captain Ethan Vance was the one who helped the most. He would often join her during her training sessions, offering advice and support. He would show her the basics of maneuvering the exosuit, explaining how it worked. The exosuit isn't just about strength, he told her one day. It's about precision. It's about controlling your movements and using your mind. You're not just wearing armor, you're becoming one with it. Sileria nodded, taking in his words. The Cravathi never relied on such technology. They trusted in their natural strength, believing that physical power was the only thing that mattered. But here, in the human world, she was learning that strength was more than just muscle. It was about using your mind, your creativity, and your ability to adapt. The days turned into weeks, and Sileria began to improve. The exosuit no longer felt awkward. She was able to move with more confidence, her movements more fluid, controlled. She even started to enjoy the training, finding a sense of satisfaction in each small improvement. The humans taught her techniques for both offense and defense, showing her how to think ahead, how to anticipate her opponent's next move. She was amazed at how much there was to learn. One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, Sileria was alone in the training room, resting against a wall. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, feeling a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in her life, she felt as if she was truly progressing, not as a weak princess, but as someone capable of standing on her own. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, Captain Ethan entered the room. He smiled at her, his eyes full of warmth. You're getting better, princess. I've seen a lot of growth in you these past weeks. Sileria looked up at him, surprised. You think so? Ethan nodded. Absolutely. You've got the drive and the determination, and you're learning how to use your mind, not just your strength. That's something many people never understand. Strength isn't just about physical power, it's about adaptability. You're learning that. For the first time, Sileria felt a sense of pride. The words of her father, King Tharvok, echoed in her mind. He had always told her that strength was the only thing that mattered. But here, among the humans, she was learning that strength wasn't something you were born with. It was something you could build. It was about finding your own way, embracing what made you different, and turning it into something powerful. Ethan saw the change in her. She had gone from a fragile, uncertain princess to someone who was beginning to believe in her own potential. It wasn't just about the training. It was about the way she carried herself now. She wasn't hiding behind her weakness anymore. She was standing tall, ready to take on whatever challenge came her way. As the days went on, Sileria's confidence continued to grow. She was no longer the frail, sickly princess who had been given away like an unwanted gift. She was becoming something more, someone who could stand beside the humans, someone who could protect herself and others. One evening, after a long day of training, Ethan sat with her in the mess hall, sharing a meal. "You've made incredible progress, Sileria," he said, his voice warm with pride. "I think you're ready for more advanced training. What do you think?" Sileria looked at him, a spark of determination in her eyes. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "I want to learn everything I can. I want to be the best." Ethan smiled. "I have no doubt you will be." Sileria felt a sense of calm settle over her. The journey ahead was still long, and there were many challenges to face, but she knew now that she was capable of meeting them. The fire inside her had been lit, and it was burning brighter with every passing day. She was no longer the weak princess of Cravath. She was becoming a warrior, not just for the humans, but for herself. And as she looked out the window, watching the stars pass by, she couldn't help but feel that her journey was just beginning. Sileria's life on Earth had slowly shifted from a place of uncertainty to a place of learning and growth. With each passing day, she felt stronger, more capable, and more in control of her own future. She had come to realize that, in this world of humans, there was more to being powerful than what her father, King Tharbuk, had taught her. Strength wasn't about fighting, at least, not in the way Cravathi did. It was about resilience, adapting to your environment, and finding new ways to succeed. But Sileria never imagined that her training would be put to the test so soon. One morning, as she was finishing a routine training session in the exosuit, alarms suddenly blared throughout the Horizon Dawn, the ship she had grown to call home. The entire crew rushed to their stations, their faces grim. Sileria stood in the middle of the training room, unsure of what was happening. Her heart raced. "Captain Vance," she asked one of the soldiers as he hurried past, "what's going on?" The soldier didn't stop. "We've been attacked. Rogue Cravathi forces are heading toward us." Sileria's stomach dropped. Rogue Cravathi forces. This was unexpected. The Cravathi, her people, had always been proud of their empire. There had been peace between the humans and Cravathi for years, but now there were those who rejected the peace treaty, those who believed the Cravathi should never have allied with humans. Captain Vance appeared in the hallway moments later, his expression serious. He stopped when he saw Sileria. "Princess, it seems there are some Cravathi warriors who don't agree with the treaty. They've attacked our ship, and they're taking us to a neutral planet where they plan to make an example of us." Sileria's mind raced. She knew that the Cravathi were fierce warriors, and if they truly intended to destroy the peace between their species, the situation could quickly spiral out of control. She had never been in combat before. She had spent her time learning and training, but now it was time to put that training to the test. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice firm. "I want to help." Captain Vance hesitated for a moment. "You're not trained for this kind of situation, Princess. This could get dangerous." "I know how to fight," Sileria replied. "I may not be a Cravathi warrior, but I have learned enough to defend myself and my new friends." Ethan looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right then, we'll need every hand we can get." Sileria joined the crew in the ship's command center, where they worked together to prepare for the incoming threat. The rogue Cravathi forces were closing in fast, and the humans had to act quickly. Sileria was handed an exosuit and a weapon, her training kicking in as she adjusted the suit's settings. She had used it many times before, but this was different. Now she was going into battle. As the rogue Cravathi ship drew closer, the Horizon Dawn fired up its engines and began to make evasive maneuvers. The crew worked in unison, keeping their cool despite the dangerous situation. Sileria, however, couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. She was about to face her own people, the people who had never seen her as strong. They had always looked down on her, believing she was weak, but now they would see her differently. The rogue Cravathi ship finally docked with the Horizon Dawn, and the battle began. Sileria and the human soldiers rushed to the docking bay, ready to face whatever would come through the airlock. The door to the docking bay hissed open, and a group of fierce Cravathi warriors entered. They were much larger than the humans, their muscular bodies towering over everyone in the room. Their eyes were filled with anger, and their weapons were drawn. The humans and the Cravathi locked eyes, each side waiting for the other to make the first move. Sileria stood tall with her exosuit powered up, her weapon at the ready. She had never fought a Cravathi warrior before, but she was not afraid. She had trained for this moment, and she was ready. The first attack came quickly. One of the Cravathi warriors lunged at a human soldier, but Sileria was faster. With a swift movement, she raised her weapon and struck, knocking the Cravathi off balance. The warrior growled, his eyes now focused on her. "You," he spat, his voice thick with disbelief. "The weak princess." Sileria didn't flinch. "I'm not weak," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm not a princess anymore." She lunged forward, using the exosuit's enhanced strength to her advantage. Her movements were precise, a combination of the training she had received and the natural instincts she had honed. With each strike, she knocked down one warrior after another. She wasn't just fighting with her strength, she was fighting with her mind, using the tactics she had learned from the humans. The battle raged on, but Sileria didn't stop. She had a purpose now. She was no longer the fragile, sickly princess of Cravath. She was a warrior, someone who had learned to stand on her own, who had fought for her place in this world. And now, she would fight for the peace between the humans and her people. By the time the last of the rogue Cravathi were subdued, Sileria was covered in sweat, her exosuit dented and scratched. But she stood tall, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She had done it. She had proven herself, not just to the humans, but to herself. Captain Vance approached her, a look of pride in his eyes. "You did great, princess." Sileria smiled, breathing heavily. "Thank you, Captain. But I'm not a princess anymore. I'm just Sileria." And with that, she knew her journey had truly begun. After the battle with the rogue Cravathi forces, life on Earth felt different for Sileria. The humans had celebrated their victory, and though she was proud of what she had achieved, there was something in her heart that lingered, a deep understanding that this battle was only the beginning. The rogue forces had been defeated, but the peace between her people and the humans was still fragile. She could sense that things were changing, both within herself and the world around her. In the days that followed, Sileria spent more time with Captain Ethan Vance. They would often sit together, discussing the events of the past few weeks, analyzing what had happened, and thinking about what was yet to come. Ethan had been more than just a guide to her. He had become a mentor, someone she could trust and learn from. One afternoon, as they sat in the mess hall, Sileria looked out the window, her mind far away. The stars shimmered in the vastness of space, and for a moment, she felt lost in the quiet beauty of it all. "Ethan," she said softly, turning to him, "why do you think the rogue Cravathi attacked us? What do they want?" Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Some of them believe that peace with the humans is a betrayal of the Cravathi way. They think that alliances with other species weaken us, that we should be focused on our strength and power alone. But that's not true, is it?" Sileria shook her head. "No, it's not true. We may be strong, but strength alone doesn't make us invincible. If we don't change, if we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. The humans have shown me that." Ethan smiled, a look of approval in his eyes. "You've learned that well. It's not just about being powerful. It's about understanding the world around you, working together, and finding new ways to grow." Sileria's heart swelled with gratitude. The lessons she had learned from the humans were priceless. They had taught her not just how to fight, but how to think, how to live. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had a purpose beyond being the daughter of a king, beyond the expectations that had once been placed upon her. That evening, as the Horizon Dawn traveled through space, an emergency communication came through. The message was from the Cravathi Empire. "Princess Sileria." The voice on the comm said, Your presence is requested. The Emperor demands that you return to Krevath immediately. You are needed to restore order to the Empire." Siluria's heart sank. She knew what this meant. Her father, King Tharvok, had likely heard of her actions on Earth. He was not one to accept disobedience, and now that she had defied the Krevathi way by siding with the humans, he would expect her to come home and answer for it. Captain Vance stood next to her, his face grim. "What will you do, Sileria?" Sileria took a deep breath, her mind racing. The call from the Emperor meant that she had no choice but to return. But she was no longer the same person who had left Krevath. The lessons she had learned on Earth had changed her, and she knew she couldn't go back to the life she had once known. "I have to go," she said, her voice steady. "But I won't go back as I was. I've learned too much, and I've changed. I can't let my father tell me who I am anymore." Ethan nodded, understanding. "Whatever happens, I'll be by your side." The next few days were filled with preparations. Sileria knew that returning to Krevath would not be easy. The Krevathi Empire was a place where strength was everything, and she had never been considered strong by their standards. But now she had something they didn't understand. She had the knowledge and the experience of a warrior, not just from the humans, but from within herself. When the horizon dawn finally reached the outskirts of Krevath, Sileria felt a sense of dread in her chest. The planet loomed large in front of her, its towering cities and vast, harsh landscapes reminding her of everything she had left behind. But she wasn't the same princess who had once been afraid of her father's disapproval. She had forged her own path, and now it was time to face the consequences. As she stepped off the ship, Captain Vance by her side, Sileria felt the weight of the moment. Her father's palace was only a short distance away, and she knew that everything she had worked for, everything she had become, was about to be tested. They were met by a group of Krevathi soldiers at the palace gates. Siluria's heart pounded as she walked toward them, her body tense, but her mind clear. She had never faced her father's wrath before, but now she was ready. When she entered the grand hall of the palace, her father was waiting for her. King Tharvok sat upon his throne, his eyes cold and judging. He looked at her, his gaze harsh, before speaking. "You have returned, but you have much to answer for, daughter," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "What have you become?" Sileria stood tall, her heart steady. "I've become who I need to be, father. Not your soldier, not your princess, but a warrior in my own right." And in that moment, Sileria knew that no matter what happened, she had found her true strength. Sileria stood in front of her father, King Tharvok, her heart steady despite the weight of the moment. The grand hall of the Krevathi palace, with its towering stone columns and harsh lighting, felt suffocating. The walls, filled with ancient symbols of power and strength, seemed to judge her. Her father's cold gaze did nothing to ease the tension in the air. He was a towering figure, his presence commanding and filled with authority. But for the first time, Sileria didn't feel the fear she once had. She had faced battles, trained hard, and learned the true meaning of strength, things her father would never have expected her to understand. And now, as she stood before him, she was no longer the fragile princess he had left behind on Earth. She was someone different, someone stronger, someone who had the courage to stand up for what she believed in. "You've returned," King Tharvok said, his voice echoing through the hall. "But you have much to explain. What have you learned from these humans that makes you abandon the Krevathi way?" Siluria's voice was calm as she replied, "I haven't abandoned the Krevathi way, father. I've learned from it. Strength isn't just about power or control. It's about adaptability, unity, and working together. The humans taught me that. We don't have to fight every battle alone. We can be stronger together." Her father's eyes narrowed, and for a moment there was silence. The air in the room seemed thick with tension as King Tharvok considered her words. Then he spoke again, his tone harsh. "You speak of unity, but what you've done is a betrayal of our people. You've allied yourself with the humans, those who are weaker than us. You've dishonored our empire." Silaria stood tall, her gaze unwavering. I don't see the humans as weak, Father. They've shown me a new way of thinking. They don't rely on brute force alone. They use their minds, their creativity, their unity. That's what makes them strong. The room was silent, and Silaria could feel the weight of the decision she had made. She had come to Cravath to face her father, to show him that there was more to strength than what he believed. But even now, she could feel the power of the old traditions pressing down on her. This was not just a personal battle. This was a battle for her future, for her place in this world. King Tharvok rose from his throne, his eyes burning with fury. You are no longer my daughter. You've chosen to side with the humans. You've chosen weakness over strength. Silaria's heart didn't falter. She had already made her choice. I've chosen to be myself, Father, and that's something you'll never understand. Before she could speak further, the doors to the hall burst open. A group of Cravathi warriors stormed in, their armor gleaming, their weapons drawn. They were the loyalists, those who followed King Tharvok's every command without question. They saw Silaria as a traitor, someone who had turned her back on her people. The leader of the group, a towering Cravathi warrior, stepped forward. Princess Silaria, he said with disdain, you have betrayed your own kind. You will answer for your actions. Silaria's mind raced. She had known this moment might come. Her father's words had stung, but this was the real test. Would she run, hide, or stand her ground? She looked at the Cravathi warriors, seeing the challenge in their eyes. But now she had something they didn't, a purpose, a belief in what she had learned. She had come to Cravath, not to fight for her father's approval, but to fight for what she knew was right. Captain Ethan Vance, who had been quietly standing by her side, stepped forward. His presence was calm, his voice firm. Silaria is not your enemy. If you want to fight, you'll have to fight us all. Silaria's heart swelled at Ethan's words. She wasn't alone. She wasn't fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the future of both the humans and the Cravathi, for a future of peace and cooperation. King Tharvok raised his hand, silencing the warriors. Enough, he said. His voice held a commanding authority. Silaria, you are a traitor, but I will offer you one chance. Return to your people. Come back to Cravath, and you will be spared. Silaria shook her head. I can't. I've seen the world beyond the Cravathi walls. I've seen what we can become if we open our minds to new ideas. The humans are not weak. They are strong in their own way. And that strength is something I want to be a part of. Her word hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment there was silence. The warriors looked to their king, waiting for his command. King Tharvok's eyes locked with his daughter's, a battle of wills between them. But Silaria stood firm, her mind set, her heart calm. The king's voice broke the silence. Very well, he said, his tone cold. You've made your choice, but remember this, Silaria. The Cravathi do not forgive. Silaria took a step forward, her voice strong. Then I will not ask for forgiveness. I will fight for what is right. With that, she turned and walked out of the palace, her step steady. The battle for her future was far from over, but she had already won the most important victory of all. She had chosen her path, and she would never look back. Silaria stood outside the Cravathi palace, her heart beating with both excitement and fear. The decision she had made was irreversible. She had turned her back on the only life she had ever known, but now she was free. Free to follow her own path, free to embrace the lessons she had learned, and free to stand up for what she believed in. She had no idea what the future held, but she was ready to face it head-on. Captain Ethan Vance stood beside her, his presence a comforting reminder that she was not alone. They had come to Cravath together, and they would leave together. Silaria had learned so much from him, not just about fighting, but about the value of unity, trust, and perseverance. As they made their way back to the horizon dawn, Silaria couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. When she first arrived on Earth, she had been weak, sickly, and unsure of herself. But now, After everything she had experienced, her training, the battles, and the lessons learned from the humans, she was stronger than she had ever been. She no longer saw herself as the daughter of a king or a princess with no power. She was a warrior, someone who had earned her strength, someone who had the courage to challenge tradition and forge her own path. The Horizon Dawn lifted off from Cravath's surface, its engines humming steadily as it soared into the vastness of space. As the planet grew smaller in the distance, Sileria felt a sense of finality. She had left behind a world filled with expectations and rules that had never truly been hers. She had chosen a new path, one that held infinite possibilities. Ethan turned to her, a small smile on his face. Where to now? Sileria looked out the window, the stars shining brightly in the distance. Wherever the journey takes us, she said. I want to see the universe. I want to help bring peace between our people. The Cravathi can learn from the humans, and the humans can learn from the Cravathi. But we need to work together. That's the only way we'll survive in this vast galaxy. Ethan nodded. I like that idea. We're stronger together. Sileria smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in her life, she truly believed it. She had always been told that strength meant fighting, but now she knew that strength meant understanding, compromise, and unity. It meant not being afraid to challenge old ways and make room for something new. As the days passed, Sileria continued to train and grow stronger. She learned more about the humans, their ways, and their cultures. She discovered that they, too, had their own struggles, their own battles to fight. But despite everything they faced, they never gave up. They never stopped trying to make their world better. And that was something Sileria admired deeply. Soon, the Horizon Dawn became more than just a ship. It became a symbol of the new world Sileria was working to build, one where the Cravathi and the humans could work together, side by side. And though there were many challenges ahead, Sileria knew that she was ready to face them. One day, as they entered a new star system, Sileria received a message from Earth. It was a communication from the leaders of the human colonies, a group that had heard of her actions and wanted to offer her a position, one where she could help guide future relations between their people and the Cravathi. The message was clear. The humans were ready for peace, and they believed that Sileria could help make that happen. Sileria read the message carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. It was her chance to bring the two species together, to build something lasting, something that could change the future for the better. Ethan, she said, her voice full of excitement, we've got work to do. Ethan looked at her, a knowing smile on his face. I thought you'd say that. Sileria smiled back, feeling a sense of purpose that she had never known before. This was just the beginning. She had crossed many obstacles, faced fierce battles, and challenged everything she had once known. But now she had the chance to build something meaningful, something that would last. And as the Horizon Dawn traveled through the stars, Sileria knew that no matter where the journey took her, she would continue to fight, not with weapons, but with her strength, her mind, and her heart. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Sileria had found her place in the universe, and it was hers to shape.